Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, dear devotees. Today we are very happy to have the association of His Grace Haridev Krishna Prabhu. He'll be sharing Bhagavad from 4th canto, 24th chapter, 39th verse. The chapter is titled Chanting the Song Sung by Lord Shiva. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Welcome. Yes, Prabhuji, you can start.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji, for giving me an opportunity to read Srimad Bhagavatam and hear also from many elevated devotees. Although quite unqualified to speak on Bhagavatam for my own purification and as a service to all the Vaishnavas and for glorification of Lord, I'll try my best to speak. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Ashtaprayeshu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, can I share the screen?
Yes, you can. You have the co-host, right?
Yes. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 24th chapter, verse number 39. Chapter is entitled Glory Rudra Geetam. Sarvasatvatmadehaya Visheshaya Staviyase Namastrailokya Saha Ojo Balaya Cha. Sarvasatvatmadehaya Visheshaya Staviyase Namastrailokya Saha Ojo Balaya Cha. Sarvasatvatmadehaya Visheshaya Staviyase Namastrailokya Saha Ojo Balaya Cha. Word to word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sarva, all, Sattva, existence, Atma, soul, Dehaya, unto the body, Visheshaya, diversity, Staviyase, unto the material world, Namaha, offering obeisances, Trilokya, 3 planetary systems, Palaya, maintainer, Saha, along with, Ojaha, prowess, Balaya, unto the strength, Cha, also. Translation. My dear Lord, you are the gigantic universal form which contains all the individual bodies of the living entities. You are the maintainer of the 3 worlds, and as such, you maintain the mind, senses, body, and the air of life within them. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport. As the individual body of the living entity is composed of millions of cells, germs, microbes, The universal body of the Supreme Lord similarly contains all the individual bodies of the living entities. Lord Shiva is offering his obeisances to the universal body, which includes all other bodies, so that everyone's body may fully engage in devotional service. Since this individual body is composed of senses, all the senses should be engaged in devotional service. For instance, the smelling instrument, the nose, can engage in smelling the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord. The hands can engage in cleansing the temple of the Lord. Indeed, being the life air of every living entity, the Lord is the maintainer of the three worlds. Consequently, he can induce every living entity to engage his real life's duty with full bodily and mental strength. Thus, every living entity should serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his prana, life, artha, wealth, intelligence, uh, prana, artha, diya, vacha. Prana is life, artha is wealth, diya, intelligence, vacha, words. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 22nd chapter, 35th shloka. एतावज् जन्म साफल्यं देहिनां इह देहिषु प्राणैरर्थे वाचा श्रेय आचरणं sada. Even though one may desire to engage in the service of the Lord, without sanction, one cannot do so. Lord Shiva is offering his prayers in so many different ways in order to show living entities how to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Ananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sahagana Raghunathanitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanitam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauravadvishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyeva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. I would again like to seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and thank the devotees for giving me an opportunity to read Srimad Bhagavatam and go through this Rudra Gita. So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has taken two principles from each of the four sampradayas. From the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, Mahaprabhu mainly took unadulterated bhakti, ananya bhakti, without any karma or jnana, and Vaishnava Seva. These two principles, Mahaprabhu took it from the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya because they're stalwarts when it comes to Vaishnava Seva and Ananya Bhakti. And when it comes to the Madhva Sampradaya, Mahaprabhu took the complete defeat of Mayavada philosophy and the worship of Sri Krishna in the Murti form. So these two, deity worship and uh, counteracting Mayavad philosophy, Mahaprabhu took from the Madhva Sampradaya. And interestingly, from Rudra Sampradaya, because this is Rudra Gita, if we analyze the mood of all the prayers of Lord Shiva, we will see how it is very apt that Mahaprabhu actually took the principle of complete shelter of Krishna, taking complete shelter of Krishna, and Raga Bhakti, Raga Marg Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti. Those two things Mahaprabhu actually took from the Rudra Sampradaya. And from the Kumara Sampradaya, Mahaprabhu took the principle of taking complete shelter of Srimati Radharani and extolling the glories of Vraja Bhakti. Those two Mahaprabhu adopted from the Kumara Sampradaya. And we can very well see from the verse of Rudra, from the first verse onwards, how Lord Shiva is demonstrating this complete shelter towards Lord Krishna and all his energies in his spirit of dependence, prayers, because bhakti is a very rare thing, rare gift. Mahaprabhu also says, Brahmande Brahmite Bhumi, Kon Bhagyavan Jiva, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bija. So it is a very, very rare gift given to us. And in this world also, if something very precious is given, one is naturally very careful to guard it, because at any time it can be stolen away. If it's a very precious gift, naturally there are many thieves who are interested to steal it. Same way, Mahaprabhu also says, this bhakti is such a precious gift, but if one is not careless, one may lose this precious gift. And Mahaprabhu says how pouring the water to nurture the seed is similar to hearing and chanting, and putting a fencing around the field to avoid all the animals to come and destroy the plant. That is like putting a fence and taking only devotee association and not getting into materialistic association. And in spite of all this, if one is careless committing the Vaishnava aparadh, it is like, even though we have fencing, but a mad elephant can just break open the fence and completely destroy the plant. In the same way, Vaishnava aparadh is so powerful that it can destroy the Bhakti Lata Beach in no time, even though we are carefully taking only association of devotees and avoiding materialistic association. So it's a very rare gift. And one symptom of us realizing how rare it is we also become very eager to protect this precious gift. And we see this is the mood adopted by Lord Shiva right from the first verse of this Rudra Gita. We will just quickly go through to see how there are two things. One is, when can a person take shelter? Only when one realizes how insurmountable Maya is, and at the same time how insignificant the person is, then one can take shelter. If one thinks that he is competent, there is no question of taking shelter, because he feels anyway, I can manage myself, like that. So Srila Prabhupada also many a time said that the problem with some of the devotees is that we are not enough fearful of Maya. We don't take shelter of Krishna, like that. So here we see Lord Shiva is teaching all the sadhakas what must be the right mood of taking complete shelter and dependence of Lord Krishna and all his energies. Here in the beginning, Lord Shiva is saying, addressing to the personality of Godhead, saying, you are the most exalted of all self-realized souls. Since you are auspicious for the self-realized, I wish that you also be auspicious for me, and you are worshipable by the virtue of the all perfect instructions you give. You are the super soul. So kindly, as super soul, please direct me on the right path always. So that is what Lord Shiva is praying here. And then he's praying to Vasudev from who's the supreme controller of senses and sense objects. Because in this world, sense gratification is one thing that always diverts us from the path of Krishna consciousness, and the senses are very, very voracious and difficult to control. So he begins offering prayers to Vasudev, saying that you please help me in, you're the controller of senses and sense objects. So let me use my senses for the service of Lord. You are very peaceful. Let me also become peaceful and not be agitated by sense gratification. And then he offers prayers to Sankarshana. Sankarshana, who is the predominating deity of Prabhupada says the master of integration and disintegration. That means creation and annihilation. It is also said he is the predominating deity of the false ego. It is this false ego through which we create many, many identities and accordingly define what our happiness and misery should be. When I identify with my family, then anything bad happens to my family, I'm elate, I'm depressed, and anything good happens, I'm elated. And the different identities which define what our happiness and sadness is based on this false ego. And Pradyumna is the predominating master of the intelligence. So he's also praying, offering prayers to Pradyumna. Make my intelligence pure so that I can understand the purport of the Vedic scriptures and use my intelligence to serve the Lord. And then in the 36th shloka, he's again offering obeisances to Aniruddha, who is the predominating deity of the mind. We all know that the mind is one of the greatest friend for a person who's learned how to control it, and it's the greatest enemy also. And we all know how much the mind can trouble a person in progress or path of bhakti. So he's offering prayers to the mind and to the senses, and also he's offering prayers to the moon god, who is actually the Bhagavatam says, for every part of our body there is one demigod and there is one Vishnu Tattva who is above the demigod, who is also the supreme controller. For example, in case of the this one, in case of the mind itself, Aniruddha is the Vishnu Tattva, who is the supreme form controlling the mind, and moon god is also in charge of the mind, but moon god is a subservient to Aniruddha. So he's also offering obeisances to the moon god, saying that how through the moon god, through moon rays, all these vegetation and other things come, and because of which we can offer oblations to Pitraloka, and in that way remove or release ourselves from the debt to our forefathers, etc. And he's also saying, let my mind be fixed in serving Krishna, like that. And here in this verse, he's offering his prayers to all the universal form of the Lord, which includes all the living entities also. And he's again saying, kindly maintain my mind, senses, body, and life air within them, so that they are all favorably engaged in your service. So the main mood underlying in this all prayers of Lord Shiva is complete dependence to Sri Krishna, understanding it is a very precious gift, that that bhakti is a precious gift, and for me to practice this bhakti, I need to pray at the same time, like the Damodar Leela. we have to depend on the mercy and also do our endeavors. Like in one of the purports I was reading, I'm not able to recollect where, but Prabhupada was mentioning a devotee, how can one engage even this uh, anus and rectum in service of God. So that was very striking, because many a times, okay, genitals to progenate Krishna conscious children, but anus, rectum, where excreta come out, how one can use it to engage in the service of Lord. There Prabhupada is mentioning a devotee is always conscious of what food to eat, so that next day he will be up and he will not have dizziness or difficulty in passing motion, so that he can do his japa peacefully, like that. So this is our endeavor in every act of our day-to-day life. We should strive to make sure that we do our endeavor so that these senses can be favorably engaged in the service of Lord. At the same time, we also pray, because despite our endeavor, understanding that we are quite insignificant, we also take shelter of the Lord to guide us, to help us, to give strength to engage all these senses in the right purpose. And we all know from the Bhagavad Gita shloka how the senses are so dangerous. The shloka in the second chapter, 69th verse, I think, it is said, Indriyanam hi charatam Yanmano anuvidiyate tadasya harati pragnam vayur navam ivambasi, where it is said, every one of the senses is so dangerous that if we allow one of the sense to wander, Indriyanam hi charatam, when we allow even one of the senses to wander, and Yanmano anuvidiyate, and when the senses are wandering, the mind is also carefully following it, and it's also trying to focus on how to gratify this sense. Then what happens? Tadasya harati pragnam, all one's intelligence is stolen, and vayur navam ivambasi, just like a boat can be toppled by one big wave, in the same way the person's steady intelligence can be toppled, like that it is said. And Srila Prabhupada in one of the lecture very beautifully gives these 5 analogies. I think this also comes in the 24 Gurus in the 11th canto. So Prabhupada says how the fish has a weakness of the tongue, and because the tongue is uncontrolled, when the fish sees that the fisherman is putting a worm and in front, the fish, because of the uncontrolled sense of tongue taste, it goes running to the worm and tries chewing it, and as it chews and goes deeper and deeper, it gets entangled and eventually gets killed or is captured by the fisherman, and eventually dies. So this is the weakness of the tongue for the fish. Similarly, the deer has the weakness of the ears. All the hunter has to do is ensure that he plays very nice music, and the deer gets mesmerized by the music, and then the hunter immediately captures the deer. And the firefly has the weakness of the eyes. Anything glittering it sees, it gets captivated. And unfortunately for the firefly, the most glittering thing is red hot fire, and it goes running into the red hot fire only to get burnt in the red hot fire, that way. And then the sense of smell, the honeybee has the weakness of the sense of smell. When it smells fragrant flowers in the forest, it goes and sits and goes on inhaling puffs of air one after another. But unfortunately for the honeybee, the most fragrant flowers in the forest are actually the insectivorous flowers like ketaki, etc. So when it sits into the flower, it gets kind of captivated by the fragrance, and the ketaki flower slowly starts closing. And although the uh, honeybee is seeing that, yes, I'm about to die, because it is attached to sense gratification, it is finding it so difficult to come out and eventually gets killed. And finally, the elephant has the weakness of the sense of touch. The she elephant sexually agitates the he elephant by the sense of touch, and the he elephant becomes mad after the she elephant starts running behind her, and eventually it is captured because it falls into a pit and the he elephant is captured. So like this, each animal has one weakness of the one sense organ as a weakness, and it can even lead to the death of that person. And for the human being, all these senses are equally susceptible to distraction. Therefore, one has to be extra cautious on dealing with these senses, because these can not just lead to the material death of a person, but for devotees, it can also lead us to the spiritual death or weakening in spiritual life. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada has given this wonderful lifestyle of four regulative principles and the morning program to help the senses to become more and more peaceful. In one of the purport, Prabhupada writes, controlling the mind is little difficult, but controlling our habits is easier. And that is what this Mangalarti, this morning japa, and the four regulative principles are helping a person, so that once the habits are controlled, then the mind also becomes peaceful and the mind does not dwell on gratifying one's senses. So this is something that we can learn. And the most difficult of all the senses is, of course, the tongue, which is most voracious. Therefore, we say daily, Sharira Vidyajal Yodendriyo Tahekar Jive Fele Vishaya Sagare. So the easiest way to control one's tongue, from where one derives energy for all other forms of sense gratification, is by trying to chant Krishna's names as the holy names of Lord as much as possible. At the same time, try to only honor Krishna Prasad, so that eventually the restless senses can be curtailed. And in the purport, Prabhupada is also saying, Lord Shiva, we all know the other aspect of Lord Shiva is his nature of compassion, because Lord Shiva is also the master of the bhutas, pretas. When all others reject, none of us would want to have our disciples as bhuta, preta, etc. We all want to have very illustrious disciples or followers, so that naturally, if the disciple is illustrious, we feel that, okay, those who are on an egoistic platform, we would want to have illustrious disciples, so that everyone can understand, if my disciple is so illustrious, then how much more illustrious I am. I am more than him, like that. Disciple means in the sense of even having an illustrious daughter, illustrious son, or illustrious followers or subordinate, whatever that way. And none of us would want to have very rejected species to be our follower. So when everyone else rejects bhutas, pretas, etc., Lord Shiva mercifully, out of compassion, adopts them and tries to give shelter to them, so that they can also progress on the spiritual path. In the same way, here Prabhupada is mentioning the mood of Lord Shiva. One is he's offering to all the parts of the body, universal form of the Lord, so that one's mind, senses, life, air, everything can be controlled and it can be used in the service of the Lord. And the second thing is that in the universal form of the Lord, the universal form is also mentioned in the second canto of Bhagavatam, called as Virata Rupa. This Virata Rupa is not a real form, it is just an imaginative material form of the Lord. And why is this form mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam? For those people who are very much averse to thinking of God as a person. How can God just have a two-handed form and still be so great? He has to be having a really great form. Some people just feel like that. God cannot just have a two-handed form. So for such people who cannot appreciate the two-handed or four-handed form of God, and who are in the mood of awe and reverence and thinking that God's every part should be great, for them to imagine the form of the Lord, this Virat Rupa is mentioned. The sun and the moon are like the eyes of the Lord. Then they think, oh, yeah, okay, God is great. His eyes are also so big. They have tremendous energy, like that. And the mountains and the trees are like the hairs, like that. So when these kind of descriptions are given, the Virat Rupa, and here Lord Shiva is praying to the entire universal form, because within the universal form there are all living entities, and Prabhupada is mentioning here, why is he praying for all the living entities? He's praying so that everyone may be engaged in devotional service, para dukkha dukhi. So this is mood of a very elevated Vaishnava. Lord Shiva is also praying, just like previously he was praying, offering prayers for his own, and now he's also offering prayers. Let everyone's body and senses be fully engaged in devotional service. And Prabhupada is giving here the great blessing of bhakti, how it is so practical that every one of our senses can be easily engaged in Lord's service. For instance, the smelling instrument nose can be engaged in smelling the flowers offered to the lotus feet of Lord. Hand can be engaged in cleansing the temple of the Lord, as that famous sloka in the 9th canto, which describes how Ambrish Maharaj, although he was a grahastha, he was a very rich king, and had all the opulences, and wives were very beautiful also, but still how he never lost control of his senses. That was because it started from Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo, because his mind was always fixed on the lotus feet of Lord, and along with the mind, all the senses were also engaged in the service of the Lord. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayor, Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunanu Varnane. All the sense of speaking was used in glorifying the Lord. Karau Hare Mandira Marjanadisho. The hands were engaged in cleansing the temple. Karau Hare Mandira Marjanadisho. 1 minute, I'll open that shloka. So where it is said that his sense of touch was fulfilled by embracing the devotees, or embracing the deity form of the Lord, massaging the vigraha of the Lord. So that is how one's sense of touch can be purified, and one's legs can be purified by walking to the holy places and circumambulating the temple. Sense of smell by offering tulasi and flowers to the Lord, smelling them, and sense of tongue by tasting prasad and tulasi that way. So every one of the senses is so practical that one can engage every one of this in the path of bhakti. Thank you, Sarvatma Rishikesh, for that shloka. Yes. So here it is. Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunanu Varnane, Karau Harer Mandira Marjanadishu. Shrutim, the sense of hearing, Shrutim Chakarachita Sat Katode, and Mukunda Linga Layadarshanadishu. One sense of sight can be purified by taking darshan of the vigraha of the Lord. And Tad Britya means servants or Vaishnavas. By embracing the Vaishnavas, by taking the dust of their lotus feet, by touching their feet, etc., one can purify his sense of touch. And Sparshanga Sangamam, Granam Chatat Pada Saroja Saurabhi. So sense of smell can be purified by smelling the flowers offered, and the sense of taste can be purified by by tasting the tulasi offered to the lotus feet. Padav Hare Kshetra Padanu Sarpane. By going to all the Punya Kshetra, the legs can be purified, and the head can be purified by offering obeisances. And all one's desires can be purified by Kamam Cha Dasya Natu Kama Kamyaha. By trying to engage in devotional service. Even Narottam Das Thakur says the best way to fight against lust is Kama Krishna Arpane. So lust means we have a tendency to enjoy independently, and we have lot of energy. So one can burn away all this energy for sense gratification by engaging all his energy in serving the Lord, like that. So same here is said, Kamam chadasya natu kama kamyaha. One can put all his desires in serving Lord, in that way purify his desires. Yet yaduttama shloka janashrayaratihi. And this is the way to increase the attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. So many a times we have great challenges, and Prabhupada is giving a clue here how to increase one's attachment to the Lord. Yes, by engaging all one's senses, because when all the senses are engaged, naturally the mind cannot get distracted. The mind also has to fall in place with the activities going on that way. So one can engage all his senses, Prabhupada is saying here. And every and Prabhupada is also saying here, every living entity should serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his prana, artha, diya, vacha. So many a times we hear, based on time, place, circumstance, if one is not able to currently dedicate his full life, he can at least dedicate his wealth, because wealth is sometimes as precious as life. We many times are so attached to wealth that we feel it is as important as life. So one can use his wealth in the service of Lord. One can use his intelligence in the service of Lord. One can use his words in the service of Lord. And when one does that, then naturally his mind and senses are purified. And in the last part, Prabhupada is mentioning, even though one may desire to engage in the service of Lord, without the sanction of Lord, one cannot do so. So first is we show our endeavor by doing all this. At the same time, we maintain a prayerful attitude, like what Lord Shiva is showing here in the Rudra Geetam, so that Lord's mercy will also come. Just like Dhruva Maharaj, as soon as Lord touched him and he gave his darshan, he said, now all my senses have become enlivened. That means, what is the meaning of enlivened senses? The senses are no longer troubled by a desire for material sense gratification. It has become enlivened, and it has understood that the purpose of all these senses is to serve the Lord. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. So that is what Lord Shiva is showing here through these different prayers, how one can engage in the devotional service of the Lord. And humility, one of the symptoms of surrender. Rupa Goswami says 6 symptoms of surrender. Anukulyasya sankalpam, pratikulyasya varjanam. So the first two are actually more within our control. That anukulyasya sankalpam, when we see something is unfavorable for bhakti, we give it up, and when we see something is favorable, we accept it wholeheartedly. So these are first 2 symptoms of surrender. And then the other symptoms of surrender are, Krishna is my only maintainer, Krishna is the protector. And the last symptom of surrender is that humility, because humility attracts Krishna. When one understands that he is very insignificant, and the conditioned soul is Anu and Lord is Vibhu, and conditioned soul can just be slapped by Maya and very easily. So when one takes shelter of Krishna in that spirit, then naturally Lord will also show extra interest in us, understanding that yes, less like Prabhupada said, when a child helplessly calls out for the mother, then the mother immediately goes trying to give attention to the child, because the mother is able to understand that it's a genuine helpless call. And in this world, many a times, this helpless state of mind is something that we many a times lack while practicing bhakti, because our mind sometimes is absorbed in trying to get shelter from all other sources like the bank balance, like the job, family, etc. And slowly, with regular association of very advanced devotees hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can slowly understand that yes, I'm in a very helpless state and I need to call out more sincerely for Lord. And Lord's always available for protection. So regular reminding will certainly help us again and again to take shelter of Lord. And in another lecture, I heard one very interesting part. Many a times we think taking shelter means only during difficult time, but taking shelter is also during very happy times. Just like when we finish our office work, we immediately run to the shelter of our home. Why? Not because that uh, we are tortured with any difficulty, but when we feel all my uh, routine tasks are over, the place where we want to spend the most happy moments is the place where we uh, derive the shelter most. So that's why we run to the home, thinking that okay, now I can exchange love with my family members, etc. So in the same way, many a times we have free time, but uh, if we are not one of the symptoms of a person who's very advanced in bhakti, nectar of devotion says, is avyartha kalatvam. So we can pray to great acharyas that we also have free time, but many a time in free time also the interest to advance in bhakti may sometimes be not the priority. So taking shelter means even in free time, where we run to. Do we run to Bhagavatam, or do we run to newspaper, or our office work, or other things like that? So these are some things that I was reflecting for myself from this shloka, how we can take home this spirit of humility and understand that bhakti is a very rare gift, and when something is precious, we should try to protect it. And one way to protect it is by practically living our life in such a way that the senses, mind cooperate in serving the Lord. And at the same time, when we show our endeavor and then pray to Krishna, Krishna will also help us on this journey. So this is all I had to share for today. I could not think of more things here. So Prabhuji, it is only 8:43. Can we take some question answers? Is it okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful class on how Lord Shiva is teaching us through his example, how we should pray to the Lord to engage our senses. And you very well explained how we should be fearful of these senses. And then various examples of how for each animal, how the senses its senses become their biggest weakness. And in case of human beings, all the five senses are susceptible. And you wonderfully concluded with an introspection point, like we should continuously think, where do we continue to seek shelter for our happy moments? I think so that's something, contemplation point. Devotees can unmute themselves to share any reflections, or if they have any questions, we can take few.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavad Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
It's wonderful lecture, and so many wonderful points we have as a beginners. I mean, we don't know like the points of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took from the other sampradayas, and the controlling of the mind and controlling of habits, what he told. Like every little point was so wonderful, especially Ambarish Maharaja's prayer. It was very, very nice, Prabhu. I don't have anything to add up for this thing, but I just want to thank you for the wonderful lecture you have given.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavad Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, you made a wonderful point of that we should all introspect and contemplate on the point where when we are doing nothing, at that time, where do we take shelter of? So probably the query is, how do we do practice that? How do we bring our mind to, to do the practice of, if you're not doing, and if you don't have anything else, how do we bring that mind, to bhakti, and practicing, whether it is reading, how do we get to that point, probably?
Actually, as per my understanding, probably that although at home, sometimes best is if at home, although we have devotee spouse, devotee children, but sometimes in the home, the atmosphere is more, many a times, doing our routine things. So whenever, like this Ugadi was their holiday, so such times if maybe some satsang programs, we can go to some devotee's house, because on our own many a times, or come to temple, that thing may help us, because in the whole Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Leela also we see that the maximum bhajans happened always in association. Shiva Sangan, these were like the places, because Kalau Sange Shakti. So taking association, when such holy holidays are there, Radhesham Prabhu once said holidays can be holy days also, like that. So if we can plan out something based on each of us can take initiative, invite some people to our home. In that way, Vaishnava Seva also gets this one. This was something I was practically thinking for myself. Whenever such holidays are coming, maybe next time I can invite some devotees home, so that at least 2-3 hours we can read in association, something that way. Because the Ugadi festival whole day went away just like that. It was a holiday. Very rarely Saturday I get holiday, and it just went away like that. So I was thinking, maybe next time when such holidays are there, we can plan and call some devotees here. Then at least 2-3 hours we can have some nice bhajan, kirtan, reading. That is something practical, I thought, for myself. I don't know whether it is appropriate. Other senior devotees can add also.
Thank you for sharing that very practical advice, and please invite us also. Please remember us, probably.
No, Prabhuji, I was planning to invite all of you only, actually. I just saw the whole 24 hours went away with very little devotion, although it was a holiday.
Hare Krishna, Haridev, Krishna Prabhu. Thank you very much for a wonderful class. I think one important point which was really I was reflecting is when we have difficulties or difficult moments in the life, naturally we will go and take the shelter of the Lord, because we don't have any other place to go. But the important point is, when we are in a very happy moment, that time, how much we are thinking of the Lord. So I think that's a very nice point you made, Prabhuji. Thank you for sharing. And on what Sri Balaji Prabhu was asking as a question, I just want to add additional comments on that, Prabhuji. I heard in a couple of lectures. One was when I was hearing to Sri Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So he was mentioning about this in the time management one class, where he said we should actually develop the habit of writing down things what we want to do in our spiritual life. It may be memorizing a sloka, or it may be completing the Bhagavata chapter on these many days, or reading specific books, or reading Srila Prabhupada's Lilamrita. Like that, we may have some ambition. I think each one of us will be having. So he said the first thing is that we have to write it down in our planner. He said, we should have a planner for ourselves, and we should write it down. And when we get some time during our work, let's say 10 minutes or 15 minutes kind of a break, so he said we should go and quickly look at our planner and then see within this 15 minutes what is that I can do. Can I read one quick sloka on translation? Like that he mentioned. Another reflect what I saw was from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu when I was reading Hiladri Mataji's autobiography. In that, the devotees have mentioned she was very busy in her devotional service, in the sense doing deity worship and all other type of cleaning activities in New Vrindavan. So she was hardly having time to read books. So in the author has written how she developed the habit of reading books was she would have 15 minutes of time between two sevas, like boiling the milk. So those days, I think she was using the fire, the coal and wood to boil the milk. So during that 15 minutes time, she pulls out the Prabhupada book and then she will read. Like that, I was surprised. Prabhuji, she was able to manage, a good amount of time in a day, like 15, like in a day, 1 hour. So she was able to read 1 hour and she was able to read Bhagavatam so many times. So that was really inspiring. And also another realization I heard from His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj in his early days. So when he was traveling to his office by train in Mumbai, so he takes out the book Bhagavad Gita and he reads during that journey time. So like that, I hear from other devotees. I'm really struggling to apply this in practice, but I thought, maybe more sincere than me can actually follow this.
Hare Krishna, Haridev Krishna Prabhu. Thank you. Wonderful. Like what Sri Balaji Prabhu said, we don't have to invite us, Prabhu. Tell us when you are at home, we'll come. Just another point, Prabhu. What you said, we should remember Lord when you are difficulties, and of course when you are happy also. But just another perspective also. In my own case, I remember those who are done, harm or some bad things to me. But I don't remember people who have done good to me. So how do I correct that?
Actually, this our Sankarshan Nitai Prabhu, not the Mayapur Sankarshan, our own Sankarshan Nitai Prabhu. He was once telling a very nice understanding he was mentioning. Prabhuji was telling that that Dhyayato Vishayam Pumsa Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodho Vijayate Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha Sammohat Smriti Vibhramaha. So he said that whenever we become angry, Smriti Vibhramaha, we lose all the memory and intelligence like that. That means when we are angry at a person for any thing that he has done wrong to us, all the good that he has done, that memory gets temporarily vanished, because Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha Sammohat Smriti Vibhramaha. So that is the nature of anger born out of unfulfilled lust or desires, which many a times we have a lot of expectation. So one practical thing which Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would implement was whenever two devotees didn't like each other, he would ask them to find out good qualities in each of them, and unless they found 9-10 qualities, he would not. And then they would realize, oh, so many good qualities he has, why should I focus only on that one wrong quality? So one thing we can do as a practice is try to glorify regularly, or try to hear from others who have great appreciation for that devotee, so that my perspective may also change. That is something that I think we can practically try to do. And another thing which we have heard is that see his service and connection to Krishna and the Guru Parampara. Suppose we may not like that person, but if he's doing lot of service to Krishna and Prabhupada, so it's just like if two children are there and the brothers don't like each other, but this brother is taking care of the mother, then naturally mother and father, if he's taken care, our heart will also melt. Okay, he's taking care of my mother and father also, like that. So in that mood also one can try to. And some other devotees have also suggested maintaining a gratitude diary, because nature of the mind is always to dwell on negatives more than positive. So if we write down in a diary, like what Sankarshan Priya Prabhu said, also that writing will help us to retain also in the mind. So that also can maybe help us to minimize the fault finding tendency and remember good things done.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Prabhu. Thank you for the full class. I had one question. So this is regarding in the duration of the discussion, the endeavor aspect of one we have heard in Damodar Leela, where Mother Yashoda was 2 fingers too short. We say this is the endeavor, and there is the sanction of the Lord, mercy of the Lord. So, and also later you mentioned that how we should endeavor. And I had just one question here, what kind of endeavor is this referring to? Because on one hand, we see that Mother Yashoda was trying to tie up little Krishna. And so she's already in the process of endeavor. And of course, she is an exalted devotee of the Lord. There would be no tainted service. So her tying up Krishna is also a kind of, so she would be in that devotional consciousness. So in our, in general devotees case, so how do we, what is that endeavor, what is being referred to? Because the endeavor is already there. So how was it short in that case? Just wanted to.
Okay. So endeavor for us is actually, Srila Prabhupada has said the nectar of devotion is the law book for ISKCON, because it is, especially the first chapters are purely for a sadhaka. What are the devotional things that we need to practice? What are the offenses that we need to avoid? What are the items of bhakti that one needs to focus on? So trying to stick to the words of the Acharya, that is the quality of a sadhaka, that obedience to the word or order of the Acharya or the spiritual master. So many a times when we become complacent in following, we think, okay, this may not be important, this may not be. So more and more within our life, whatever practically possible to implement out of the 64. Prabhupada said by attending Mangalarti, 50 items of the 64 items of bhakti are covered like that. So whenever there is possibility, we make a attempt to, on Sunday, if it is practical, then we have to be determined, okay, at least on this day, let us try and attend the Mangalarti like that. So when Lord sees that, okay, this person is sincerely trying to, he knows that on a day-to-day life, it is practically impossible for him. But whenever he's getting an opportunity, he's trying to take advantage of it. I think that itself is a sign of that we are endeavoring to advance in bhakti. Did it answer, Sarvatma Rishikesh?
Yes, Prabhuji. I was specifically also asking, in that case, Mother Yashoda's case,
Mother Yashoda's
what
case.
are the acharyas referring to as endeavor?
Okay.
Of course, all these points are very relevant. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mother Yashoda was rendering her service to Krishna as a mother, and a mother's nature is to make the child obedient and disciplined also. So that was her endeavor. She wanted to make sure that she performed her service as a mother properly. Sometimes as mothers, Matajis may have to sometimes be little harsh to their children. Why? Because they want to render that service to the child in a proper way, so that spiritually and socially, morally, everywhere, they are not blamed. So that was her endeavor, as far as I understand, that she had the vow of being a mother, and she wanted to serve Krishna, so that tomorrow nobody will point fingers at Krishna saying that he's a indisciplined child. So because she was trying to render her service to Krishna as a mother perfectly by trying to discipline him, then Krishna agreed to also be bound. This is my understanding, Prabhuji. I'm not sure whether this is the right one.
No, it's just like because it says that it was short, no, short on one side, 2 fingers too short. What I've heard in lectures, I just want to understand what was short in her endeavor before and after. Like,
Oh, okay. Okay.
or is it like that continued sustained endeavor? And also one other aspect, is it some endeavor that is, the Lord sanctions? And then,
It is this way that Lord is infinite, and with our own endeavor, it is impossible to conquer the Lord. Just like the karmis or the karmavadis, what do they say? By my hard work alone, I can this one conquer everything like that. So it is impossible with whatever sincere endeavor we do. Still, the Lord be conquered. The Lord has to voluntarily agree. Yes, I'm willing to be bound by this devotee because he has genuine affection, and I think that maybe that feeling of dependence that yes, Lord, I'm doing my best, but finally I need your mercy. And when Lord agrees and gives his mercy, saying this endeavor, because I feel that we cannot conquer Lord with our endeavor, however perfect it is. And finally, Lord only has to reveal himself or agree to be bound, seeing our sincerity. So I don't know what was the prayer or mood that the acharyas have explained. Was Mother Yashoda, what mood she developed that Lord immediately agreed, okay, now is the time that I'll reveal my mercy. But NOD says some of the favorable moods to attract Lord's mercy: intense greed, hankering, humility. These are favorable moods which can quickly soften the heart of this one. Just like a wife knows what will please the husband, and she tries to act in such a way to win the heart of the husband. The same way, acharyas have given certain favorable moods in bhakti which one can cultivate, so that Lord can be quickly attracted. That is what I understand.
yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Shall we end, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, we can conclude with Vaishnava pranams.
Ancha kalpataruvyascha कृपा सिन्धुभ्यः च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। जय कृष्ण।
Premanand.
Thank you, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.